Okay, well, thanks very much to Ruben coming in here to talk all about White Dwarf 145. Ruben reached out to me in one of the comments on one of the other My First White Dwarf videos, and I invited him on to talk all about this exciting issue. So, Ruben, thanks very much for coming on.
Right, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, 145, that was the first White Dwarf that I owned. It was at a time where I was still in high school, and I had previously bought the HeroQuest and Space Crusade, or Star Quest as it's called here, um, the boxes, and I was really taken by all the mechanics and all the miniatures and stuff. But I really didn't know anything about Games Workshop because it was a fairly unknown entity at the time in the Netherlands where I live, and it was just impossible to get a hold of anything else outside of regular retail channels, just like the MB Hero Quest and Space Crusade boxes. But I did manage to buy an RTB01 box just when I was abroad with my parents. I didn't know what it was, but I did do a lot of model building or plastic kits. So I was, yeah, instantly in love with that. And from there, from the little snippets of information that came with that box and in the store, I was told that there was a convention somewhere. And I went there with a couple of friends. And we saw for the first time an entire table laid out for a rogue trader battle. And that was really something. I just gawked at that. And then there was a little stand next to it, and that sold, well, Games Workshop stuff, but also White Dwarfs. You know, as scrapped for cash as I was, I could only afford one issue. The newest one, that was 145, so this must have been around 92, early 92, and I really wanted this one because on the cover it said HeroQuest and Space Crusade, and those were the games that I knew. The woman behind the counter said, "Well, you can have three older issues for the same price," and I was, "No, I want this one because this details the games that I have." So that was the first White Dwarf that I bought. It's the oldest one I have. Well, actually, later on I bought some older issues, obviously. But it must have been the one that I've lived through the most in all these years, because yeah, it was for many years it was the only one that I had. Then we can just go ahead. So yeah, going into the issue, we have first off the contents, obviously, with the pictures of all the well-known people at the time. Andy Chambers, personal favorite of mine, especially because of his handlebars. And then we have Mike McVeigh, obviously a bit of a celebrity with all his painting. And I didn't know these people at the time, of course. It was only afterwards that I realized, well, okay, these are the guys that really helped get the ball rolling.
Thanks, Ruben.
So yeah, Golden Demon 92. That was a new concept for me as well, because little did I know that people could actually paint this well. At the time, I was still painting all my miniatures and all my my models with enamels and oil paints, and the level of detail and the level of shading that you could achieve with those oil paints at the time, that was unheard of. Yeah, I thought that was impossible. I thought that the miniatures on the sides of those game boxes, that they were actually photoshopped, because nobody could paint like that. And then we come to the meat of this issue. This was the main draw for me when I bought it, and that's the Space Crusade Renegade campaign. I had played Space Crusade with my mates quite a lot before that. It was really a favorite with us, and the fact that there was an extra campaign in here, that was really interesting. We have played through the books and the expansion, the one expansion that I had many times. So here we are at some new stuff. But the thing that kept us from ever playing this one is the fact that it used Terminators and Librarians, because I didn't have any. it was that was a real shame. Before this issue, I didn't even know what a Terminator or a librarian was. Actually, I was a librarian help at the time because that was my side job in high school. But yeah, Terminators not so much. So I had. That was a whole new page for me, literally and figuratively speaking. And I really liked the concept and the idea of having really powerful miniatures going in, but I didn't have them. And here in the back of this issue, there's actually a page because you could write to the mail order, and I actually, because I just leafed through this previously. I had actually entered this form to order 2 boxes of Terminators and Tyranids. So I was obviously planning to get this campaign off the ground. Never got sent though. I never got that set, so I probably never ordered. It was, probably postage would be a bitch even then. Because going from the UK to the Netherlands and all that, international mailing of packages was really not a regular thing at the time. Well, here's the librarian, which is a great looking mini. This is eventually I got them because I eventually, when I got into the hobby, I also much later, as second hand, I bought Space Hulk, and then the Gene Stealers and the Deathwing expansions. So I got these librarians after all, but not at the time. These are some pretty nice markers as well. I actually ventured, and I think about a decade ago or so, I made some expansions for Space Crusade because at the time the kids were born, and I was hoping that I could entice them to play this game with me. And I was like, well, I'll make some extra chapters for that. So I made a Dark Angels, a Space Wolves, and my own homebrew chapter, the Fiery Lions. And I made teams for them and cards, and I really should make these tokens as well. Basically, after this, we get all the missions and primary and secondary missions, which is interesting. And they also give you the option to actually do this mission with or without the expansions. Mission Dreadnought in particularly, because Mission Dreadnought was released in the Netherlands, but the other one, I believe it was called Eldar Attack, never was published in on continental Europe. So only about that same decade ago, I acquired them in parts. So I have both sets now. But you could play it with or without, which is actually a nice touch because people can just play it with the base game. So then there are the missions 2 and 3. What I always liked about this was the modularity of the boards. We could just flip them around a bit. It's just not one big board, but 4, and they all use a square version here because of the centerpiece that came with the game. But there are also scenarios, I believe, also in Mission Dreadnought that are linear. So you have like 3 or 4 of these lined up in a line, which is a different way of playing things. So I always like that. There are some missions behind it. But the artwork that really jumps out, because this was, I think, also the artwork on the Gene Stealer expansion box for Space Hulk. And it's been used many times before by David Gallagher, obviously. And it's just awesome. I mean, all these hybrids just storming through a hallway, I can presume, with a patriarch in the end. It was awesome, some pure strains, I think. And for the longest time, I've really wanted these as well. I'm actually still trying to collect all the metal hybrids, but they go for crazy money these days. Mission number 5 is really nice. Obviously, it's more of the same, more of maps and all that, and also a really cool bit of artwork, but just Goodwin, of a Deathwing Terminator, which is also the other piece of artwork on the other page is also out of the Deathwing expansion, I think. But I really love this style of drawing. This is pretty early stuff, I think, for the Deathwing. I think it is from the expansion box, and it shows them still as Native American origin, reverting to their roots, just before painting the armor white. Because you can see that it's dark armor here still.
Yeah.
One can only assume that it was dark green because of the Dark Angel color. We'll see is the Psionic cards for the librarians, which was actually quite extensive, because all the different chapters, all three, they all got their own versions of them. They all got a bit of specialty psychic powers for the librarians, which would be a huge change from the base game, because then you have all these psychic powers they can use. You can use them offensively, like just explosions and all that, but you can also control them, have lightning arcs and all that. And that was, that's really something. The alien player, as they call him, I believe. Actually, the DM controlling all the opposition. They don't get all these, so that made it more difficult for them. But then they get more gene stealers. So there's that. Great artwork there as well. The Magus just using a psychic power. I suppose that the alien player would also get that psychic power then. Just frying a Terminator, actually two, and then the librarian defending himself with a bit of a force shield. So yeah, and here you have all the others, because every chapter had a bit of an emphasis on a certain characteristic of a chapter. So Blood Angels were mainly close combat, so they were geared towards that, even in the base game. And then you had the Imperial Fists, who were more like standoffish and just shooting from afar. And you had the Ultramarines, who were a bit of both, really. And I can only see that the psychic powers reflect those characteristics. The Hunter Slayer squads, they were what would later become the Termagons, and later from Homicons as well. They're just like these little critters. They evolved quite a bit, just like the Tyranid warriors. I've always found them quite ugly, and they still are, I suppose. But now we have some rose-tinted glasses because from nostalgia, and I actually have a couple of these. Still need to paint them up, and they're not bad sculpts, really. It just look really weird in pictures from any angle. If you handle them, they're actually quite okay. Right, and then the Gene Stealers, which are a staple even today. They didn't change at all, really. They gave them some new sculpts, but that's just resculpting the same look. So they, and they were ubiquitous. They were in every box set, just about. So yeah, they're great. I have a ton of them. I don't know. And then Zoats. Well, they've gone the way of the dodo, haven't they? Although there is a new one that has been released, I believe. I've been a bit out of the loop with Games Workshop's new releases, actually, but this one, the Zoats, they've been extinct for decades. And the Gene Stealer Patriarch, he's the big man. There's also a different sculpt of this sitting on a throne, and I remember getting that sculpt really like 20 years ago when it bits by, and I really didn't know what to do with it. So in the end, I gave it away, which I deeply regret by now. And then the Magus, well, there are different ones of these as well. You have one that came actually with the guy with the patriarch on the throne, was just whispering in his ear, something like that. I always thought that was a nice touch. And well, they're all cloaked and hooded with staffs and all that.
If you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. So the Brood Brothers, they're a bit weird because they are just a combination of different lines of miniatures that just in the picture here there are plastics from the Imperial Army box. That's not Imperial Guard but Army at the time, and then there are some minis from the Confrontation game as well, which is the precursor to Necromunda. And there's one in the back that's actually, I believe, a Titan crew member. If you can recall them. That's on the back row, second from the left. And there were some crew members for Titans that they made. And this is one of them, I believe. But if you throw them all together like they're in a coherent paint scheme, or kind of coherent, then it all makes sense all of a sudden. I really like this, but I really had no idea how to even collect these. And even now, they are quite rare, all these Confrontation minis.
Yeah.
Yeah, squigs. Those are the odd ones out, right? Because they're all orcs, really. They were supposed to be part of the orcs, and then they retconned that by just saying, "Well, okay, they got captured by these are the remnants of tyrannified orcs that they captured before, and they just ended up like this." And then the orcs recognized them as their own, and they took them in as squigs. So that's how the story goes. Didn't last long because this is all Rogue Trader mind. So in second edition, the squid swarms were gone, and they're also very difficult to find these days. I've never found any of these particular ones. And then the Screamer Killer, which was like the centerpiece of the army at the time, because if you notice that there's not really an army leader, there's no lord or anything like that, and this was just a centerpiece for slaves. Those were also pretty weird, and I think it's just a way of shoehorning other lines into that army just to bulk it out a bit, because these are obviously Chaos Space Marines. Then there's Heavy Metal, just painting some epic skill stuff, which is nice. I never really got into epic, although a couple of years back, I think about 5 years or so, maybe even more, there was on a local marketplace, like a local eBay site. There was a guy in a city, really in the north of the country, who said, "Well, I have these 2 boxes. You can get them for free." Ah, yes, HeroQuest, which was probably one of the 2 big draws. Obviously, it fights with the Space Crusade one, or which one I wanted to do most. And again, this one as well was one that I read from start to finish many times, but I didn't have all the minis in there because, like with Space Crusade, not all the expansions were released here in the Netherlands, and into the Ogre Horde, I believe, or against the Ogre Horde. That was the expansion that was never released here, and I could really do with some ogres, especially in this expansion. The extra scenarios. We tried to play these, I recall, but I used Space Marines as ogres, which took a bit away from the experience, I think.
Yeah.
But well, it worked out. It was great, and I always wanted to have some of the miniatures in here. But I think I have them right now. Yeah, but yeah, again, these are just using the MB games and just giving it a nice twist and a bit more mileage out of those boxes. The next scenario, or the next battles in the scenarios, and Well, they were always a bit cramped. Obviously, if you look at that map, you can see all these rooms are just stacked with monsters. Fun thing is that with a newer group, the ones that I played with now, we also played through all the scenarios, and it was like, or they played through the scenarios. They were like, well, we renamed this Squad Quest because they had just like this game, like, well, one kicked in the door, then someone started shooting inside the room, then the barbarian and the dwarf stormed in and just took it all off, and it was just like rinse and repeat, and they just waltzed through all the scenarios. because if you look at it, not like a kid who is individually going for, I want the treasure, no, I want the treasure, and but do it as a team, then really there is nothing that a DM can do to stop them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And here it was in the yellow, Pierre Chanvier. That was one of the characters that was added to the group, and I really wanted this mini, and never really got hold of it until a couple of years back when I was on a forum that I frequent, the Lead Adventures forum, and I mentioned this, and there was one guy said, "I've got one in the bits box. You want it? I'll send it to you." So yeah, there was. So now I'm all painted up really nice.
Right.
That's nice, a fun one to it. Yep. And on the next page was just an ad for Advanced HeroQuest, which was really interesting to me, obviously. And I looked at it, and it probably is like the fantasy version of Space Hulk. I got it later on, and we played it quite a bit, although my mates always thought that the randomization of the adding of the rooms was a bit of a pain, because you rolled for the different rooms or hallways that you put on there, and we got just circular things, and then that didn't work out really well. So yeah, we only did a couple of missions in that, but I still like the minis, and they were all just different variations of the minis that you got in the in HeroQuest, really. Because I think Advanced HeroQuest, and you also had Advanced Space Crusade, right? And they were just reverting to purely Games Workshop without Milton Bradley in there, and they couldn't call it one way, and they had to reinvent all the minis. So yeah, that was always weird to me, because I was used to the MB minis, and then you get these, which are actually most of the time a bit nicer, I think. This is really interesting, because they have the same scenarios, the same adventure, but then for a different game system, for Advanced HeroQuest. So we had for HeroQuest the previous pages, and then here you get these. And I read through this as well, just for the background, because there's a bit more background in here. But obviously, not having the game, never did really much with it. Although I was really interested in the tables that were in there. The character sheet, it was quite a bit more expanded compared to the original HeroQuest ones. So I always figured that this one was indeed more advanced. So like I said, tables. Yeah, there were all kinds of tables in here, and you just had to roll for them, and then they would appear. And that is, I like it. I like the unpredictability of it. But my mates really didn't. So yeah, if you have no one to play with, then it stops right there, right?
That's right.
And there you get all the scenarios. These were laid out because they were not as random, because of they had to play out this scenario, which is quite different from, I believe, from the original or normal way of playing Advanced HeroQuest. Like I said, because of the random generation. And here, everything is just set like a Milton Bradley HeroQuest game. Yep, more scenarios, more background. Loved reading through what each location was, because I had a bit of experience with role playing the original Dungeons and Dragons, the first version, And something that we had here locally, which is a German game, really. In Germany, it's called Das Schwarze Auge. In Dutch, it's called Oog des Meesters, which means like the eye of the lords. In English, it doesn't translate well because it would be like the black eye, which is probably not the way you want to call your game. And they're more of the narrative and some really nice artwork there. Really liked the Chaos Warrior, which is straight up out of Milton Bradley's HeroQuest as well, apart from the corn symbol on his shoulder. And the henchmen, they were pure advanced HeroQuest, obviously. So that was a nice mix of the two. Yeah. Those were some of my favorite minis. Those Chaos Warriors in the game.
Yep.
Yeah, they painted up really nicely, easily as well. Just metallics, and I still did these in enamels at the time, obviously.
Right.
But that worked really well on these minis, and then some red eyes in there. The last pages. Yeah, here, like I mentioned in the previously, the order form, I actually filled it in. I have it in front of me, filled out in pencil, I believe. Yeah, you can see on the screen. Terminators and Tyranids, 2 boxes for $23.98 in total.
Oh,
With my old address, still living with my parents, I saw. So that was
lovely,
including post and packaging, because they threw in 40%. So that would be £33.57 for what I wanted to order. Yeah, and that was 2 boxes and they had like 3 warriors, 12 gene stealers, 4 hybrids, 10 scouts, 6 terminators, and 2 librarians. And I remember a mate of mine actually got this box, and we actually swapped some minis. And I swapped, I believe, my Chaos Warriors of Chaos Space Marines from Space Crusade for some Terminators.
Right.
Probably in the back of my head that I wanted to play these scenarios in this White Dwarf. So that's how I got my first Terminators, I believe. Those were the plastic ones from Space Crusade. It was an entire plastic set. That was fun. But then later on, I had to resource all those Chaos Space Marines, which was quite easy because they were cheapest chips at the time.
Yeah, that's right, man.
Here they are, the Gene Stealers. They're looking great. Yeah. I think these are still some of the cooler sculpts in the 40k range. Great. And then the Terminators. Yeah, got this box eventually with the Terminators with all the options in it. And they're they were always really cool. Always loved that captain. Screamer Killer, like the big boy in the army, like I mentioned. He's really heavy too. All metal and all that. Yeah. Yep. And then you got the Zoats, which they have different torsos. I believe that the Zoat body was actually the same one they used on the fantasy ones, and they just added some sci-fi stuff to the other torsos. This one that's actually interesting because this here is in the catalog pages as a metal version, right?
Yeah, it is.
Because there are plastic versions of this one as well with a separate thorax, which you can actually see the organs inside of that thorax.
You can. Cool. Yeah, that's right.
But this one is a metal one, and I have both. I have a couple of metal ones and a couple of plastics, and I always find it weird because it's the same mini, and they just released it first in metal or first in plastic. I don't know which one came first. And somebody once told me that the metal ones were just cast of the plastics, but that's not true because they are subtly different. They are actually resculpts. So I don't know which one came first. I think my theory is that the metal ones came first, and then they had the opportunity to do plastics, and they just resculpted it to fit into a frame, and did them afterwards. And when you put them next to each other on the table, they look exactly the same. It's only just small little details, but I think it's a nice little tidbit here. And I have the ogres. Yeah, I really like this this page as well. I like the sculpt. My favorite is actually the bounty hunter on the second row, and then the far right.
Ah, yeah, I like him too.
Yeah, it's really cool. And mostly because this one featured in the HeroQuest adventures as well. So I have quite a lot of these. Not all of them, but they enough to make a good unit out. That was the issue. That was 145.
Mate, that's your very first White Dwarf, and it's been fantastic to go through it with you, Ruben. It's been some really interesting content there for especially the Milton Bradley games, and also the Advanced HeroQuest, that came later from Games Workshop. But it's just crammed full like all these old White Dwarves with loads and loads of content that you can be all used in your games to expand your experience. So thank you so much again, mate, for coming on to go through it with us.
Love being here. It was fun leaping through that one because it was a trip down memory lane, really. So it was fun. Thanks for having me.
No problem, mate. Thank you so much again, and appreciate that. I will see you again next time. Take care, mate.
All right. Take care.